First Contact and Misconceptions. In my 3 centuries as the Galactic Confederation's chief military analyst, I have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Yet none have fascinated me more than the humans. I remember preparing my first report on their species and how catastrophically wrong my initial assessment would prove to be. The day of first contact seemed unremarkable. Our long-range sensors detected a primitive radio signal emanating from a spiral arm of the galaxy, from a blue-green world the natives called Earth. Standard protocol dictated observation before engagement, so for 50 cycles we watched. They were amusing, these humans. Their global communication network buzzed with an endless stream of entertainment, commerce, and mundane daily activities. They fought their wars with crude projectile weapons and argued endlessly about resources and territories. Nothing suggested they would become what they are today. When we finally made contact, their response defied our predictions. Instead of panic or aggression, they responded with curiosity and cautious diplomacy. Their leaders, gathered in what they called the United Nations, presented a unified front that impressed even our most cynical observers. They asked intelligent questions about our technology, our society, and our intentions. Most importantly, they listened. What truly caught our attention was their approach to joining the Confederation. Unlike other species who either cowered in fear or attempted to demonstrate military might, humans focused on trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. They seemed almost apologetic about their military capabilities, preferring to showcase their achievements in medicine, arts, and environmental restoration. Their military, when we finally inspected it, appeared modest by Confederation standards. Their ships still relied heavily on chemical propulsion, their weapon systems seemed outdated, and their defensive capabilities looked barely adequate for planetary defense. My initial report classified them as a Category 3 civilization, capable of interstellar travel but lacking significant military potential. How wrong I was. The humans had a saying that I would later come to appreciate: speak softly and carry a big stick. While they spoke of peace and trade, they were quietly observing, learning, and adapting our technology in ways we never imagined possible. Their apparent technological disadvantages masked a terrifying efficiency in resource utilization and tactical innovation. I first glimpsed their true nature during the Centauri border dispute. A group of Rigelian pirates, notorious for their brutality, attacked a small human mining colony. The Confederation expected a diplomatic protest, perhaps a request for protection. Instead, we witnessed something unprecedented. The humans responded with a single ship, the EFS Nightingale. It appeared to be a medical vessel, broadcasting healing signals on all frequencies. The pirates, sensing easy prey, moved to intercept. What happened next still haunts the nightmares of veteran spacers. The Nightingale's peaceful exterior concealed a weapon system unlike anything we had seen before. It didn't destroy the pirate vessels. It disabled them, systematically, and with surgical precision. Each shot targeted non-essential systems, rendering the ships helpless without casualties. When the battle ended, all 15 pirate vessels hung motionless in space, their crews alive but thoroughly defeated. The humans called it humanitarian warfare, a concept that seemed paradoxical to most Confederation species. They could have destroyed the pirates, but chose a more difficult path that preserved lives. This incident should have made us reevaluate our assessment of human military capabilities, but we dismissed it as a fluke. Their colonization efforts followed a similar pattern. While other species established military outposts and fortified positions, humans built trading posts and cultural centers. They seemed to prioritize diplomatic solutions to every conflict, often making significant concessions to maintain peace. The Confederation interpreted this as weakness, not recognizing that each concession was carefully calculated. I remember discussing human military doctrine with Admiral Cattall of the Arcturus Defense Force. "They're too soft," he declared, "too focused on preserving life." In real war, such hesitation leads to defeat. I noted his observations in my reports, but added a personal caveat. Their dedication to minimizing casualties may indicate a deeper understanding of warfare's cost. As humans expanded their influence through trade and cultural exchange, they maintained this apparent pacifistic stance. They joined peacekeeping missions, provided humanitarian aid, and mediated conflicts between other species. Their military remained modest in size, their weapons seemingly unchanged. Yet they invested heavily in defensive technologies, shield systems, and what they called non-lethal deterrence. We should have questioned why a species so devoted to peace maintained any military at all. We should have wondered about their insistence on developing defensive technologies beyond their apparent needs. We should have noticed how their ships, while outwardly primitive, could outmaneuver our most advanced vessels in joint exercises. But we didn't. We saw what we expected to see: a young, idealistic species more interested in trade than warfare. Even as they expanded their sphere of influence, even as their technology quietly evolved, we maintained our original assessment. Humans were categorized as skilled diplomats and traders, nothing more. The Varaxian Empire shared our misconceptions. As their war fleets gathered at the edge of human space, they expected another easy conquest. After all, humans had never demonstrated any significant military prowess. They had backed down in every major confrontation, chosen negotiation over conflict, compromise over confrontation. The Varaxians would learn, as we all would, that humanity's reluctance to wage war did not stem from inability, but from a profound understanding of its consequences. They were not weak. They were waiting. Not hesitant, but patient. Not incapable of war, but masters of its darkest arts who chose to walk a different path. As I complete this section of my report, I cannot help but reflect on the irony. We dismissed humans as reluctant warriors, never understanding that their reluctance was their greatest strength. They did not avoid war because they feared it, but because they respected its power. And when finally forced to fight, they would demonstrate a mastery of warfare that would reshape our understanding of what it means to be truly powerful. The signs were there all along. We simply lacked the wisdom to see them. The breaking point. The Varaxian Empire's first incursion into human space came without warning. 3 border colonies fell in less than a standard week. The attacks followed their usual pattern: overwhelming force, maximum destruction, no survivors. The Confederation Council convened an emergency session, expecting humans to plea for military intervention. Instead, they surprised us again. Earth's ambassador, Sarah Chen, approached the podium with unusual calm. "We request a direct communication channel with the Varaxian leadership," she announced. "No demands for justice, no calls for retribution, just a simple request for dialogue." The council chambers erupted in whispers of disbelief. I was present during that session, analyzing human response patterns. Their composure seemed incongruous with the loss they had just suffered. My instruments detected no unusual stress patterns in Ambassador Chen's voice, no elevated hormonal levels indicating fear or anger. She displayed the steady readiness of a seasoned commander, not the desperation of a defeated diplomat. The Varaxians accepted the communication request, likely amused by what they perceived as human weakness. Their supreme commander, Vextor, appeared on the council's central display, his scaled face twisted in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Have you come to discuss terms of surrender?" he asked. What happened next should have warned us all. Ambassador Chen smiled back, but it wasn't the nervous smile of a victim. It was the patient smile of a teacher dealing with a particularly slow student. "No, Commander Vextor. We've come to offer you a choice." She proceeded to lay out terms that shocked the council. Humans would cede the conquered territories to the Varaxian Empire, along with a significant buffer zone. In exchange, they requested only the safe passage of any surviving civilians and a non-aggression pact lasting 50 standard years. The Varaxians, emboldened by this apparent capitulation, launched attacks against 5 more human colonies. Again, Earth's response was diplomatic. They offered more concessions, more territories, more resources, With each retreat, the Varaxians grew more confident and more aggressive. But something wasn't right. As the Confederation's chief military analyst, I noticed patterns that others missed. Each human withdrawal was orderly, methodical. They evacuated not just people but entire infrastructures. Industrial complexes, research facilities, even soil samples. Everything vanished before the Varaxians arrived. They left behind only empty buildings and deactivated systems. I submitted a report highlighting these anomalies. The humans are not retreating, I wrote. They are repositioning. The Council dismissed my concerns. After all, how could a species that avoided conflict at every opportunity pose any real threat? The answer came during the Varaxian attack on New Terra, humanity's largest colony world. The Empire committed a third of their fleet to this assault, expecting another bloodless victory. They found the planet seemingly defenseless, its cities empty, its spaceports abandoned. As their ships moved into orbit, human representatives transmitted another offer of territorial concession. Then everything changed. The first sign was subtle, a slight variation in background radiation that our sensors barely detected. Then communication with the Varaxian fleet became erratic. Their ships began reporting system malfunctions, power fluctuations, navigation errors. Within hours, the mighty Armada hung powerless in space, their weapons disabled, their engines dead. From the darkness of space emerged vessels unlike anything we had seen before. They bore human markings but displayed technology far beyond what Earth had ever revealed. These ships moved with impossible precision, their hulls seeming to bend light itself. They surrounded the disabled Varaxian fleet without firing a single shot. Ambassador Chen's next transmission to Vextor was brief. The choice we offered still stands. Withdraw your forces from all human territory, honor the non-aggression pact, and your fleet returns home intact. Refuse, and we demonstrate why our species has worked so hard to avoid war. The Varaxians, arrogant to the last, refused. What followed was a demonstration of military precision that redefined our understanding of warfare. The human ships launched what appeared to be simple communication buoys. These devices attached themselves to the Varaxian vessels and began broadcasting data. Not weapons fire, not explosions, just information. We later learned that these transmissions contained complete technical readouts of the Varaxian ships, including detailed analyses of design flaws, tactical weaknesses, and strategic vulnerabilities. The humans had spent their retreat studying every aspect of Varaxian military technology. They hadn't been running away. They had been gathering intelligence. But the true shock came with the second wave of data. The humans transmitted their complete analysis of Varaxian biology, including their genetic susceptibility to certain frequencies of radiation, their inability to process specific chemical compounds, and their psychological vulnerabilities to particular sensory inputs. They had turned their scientific understanding into a weapon more potent than any battleship. This information has already been distributed to every major power in the galaxy, Ambassador Chen announced. We know how to disable your ships, neutralize your weapons, and incapacitate your troops without causing permanent harm. The choice remains yours, but be aware that your military superiority was an illusion we allowed you to maintain. The Varaxian Empire, for the first time in its history, retreated. They had not lost a single ship or soldier, yet they had been completely defeated. As their fleet limped home, I finally understood the true nature of humanity's reluctance to wage war. They had not been avoiding conflict out of fear or weakness, but out of a terrible knowledge of their own capabilities. The galaxy would never be the same after that day. We had witnessed the emergence of a military power that didn't need to destroy to defeat its enemies. The humans had mastered the art of victory without violence, and in doing so, had become something far more frightening than mere conquerors. They had become peacekeepers who could not be challenged, diplomats whose words carried the weight of unimaginable power, and reluctant warriors whose very reluctance made them unstoppable. The silent storm. The day after humanity's demonstration of power, I received an invitation to Earth. As the Confederation's senior military analyst, they said I deserved to understand what I had been observing all these years. What I discovered there reformed everything I thought I knew about warfare. Beneath the surface of every major human city lay vast complexes dedicated to what they called defensive innovation. But these were unlike any military installations I had seen before. Scientists worked alongside soldiers, artists collaborated with strategists, and civilians freely offered insights to military planners. They called it the Integration Protocol, a system where every segment of society contributed to defense technology. Admiral Helena Santos, my guide through Earth's Strategic Command, explained their philosophy. Our greatest weapons aren't our ships or our technology, she said, leading me through a massive holographic chamber. It's our understanding that every conflict is a failure of imagination. We prepare for war precisely because we want to avoid it. The chamber sprung to life, displaying a three-dimensional map of human space. Points of light indicated what I had always assumed were civilian installations. "Watch," she commanded, entering a series of codes. The map transformed. Those seemingly innocent trading posts, cultural centers, and scientific outposts connected in an intricate web of defensive positions. Each facility contained hidden military capabilities, but not traditional weapons. They housed sophisticated sensor arrays, quantum communication networks, and what humans called environmental modification systems. "We never lied about our military capability," Admiral Santos explained. "We simply allowed others to underestimate the scope of what we consider military assets. Every human colony, every trading post, every diplomatic mission is part of our defense network. We turned our entire civilization into a defensive grid." The implications staggered me. Humanity hadn't been building an empire. They'd been constructing the galaxy's most sophisticated defensive network, disguised as civilian infrastructure. Their retreats before the Varaxians hadn't been acts of cowardice. They were carefully orchestrated maneuvers to complete this network's coverage. But the true revelation came when Admiral Santos showed me their combat doctrine archives. Humans had developed what they called systemic warfare, an approach that viewed conflict not as a clash of forces, but as a complex system to be understood and influenced. Every human soldier was trained not just in combat, but in psychology, environmental science, and cultural studies. Traditional warfare focuses on destroying the enemy's capability to fight, a training hologram explained. We focus on removing their desire to fight. Anyone can break things. The real challenge is fixing them. Their weapons reflected this philosophy. What we had dismissed as primitive ballistic technology was actually a sophisticated system of precision tools. Their ships carried more computing power than weapons, designed to analyze and adapt rather than simply destroy. Even their defensive systems were built to teach rather than punish. The Varaxians had unknowingly helped demonstrate the effectiveness of this approach. Every attack against human territory had been recorded, analyzed, and added to an ever-growing database of tactical responses. The humans hadn't just been gathering intelligence. They had been learning how to defeat their enemies without fighting them. But perhaps most shocking was their contingency planning. Admiral Santos showed me simulations of responses to various threats, each more sophisticated than the last. "These aren't battle plans," she explained. "They're peacemaking strategies that happen to include military elements." One simulation demonstrated the response to a full-scale invasion of Earth itself. Instead of planetary defenses or counterattacks, it showed a cascading series of social, economic, and environmental changes that would make occupation impossible. They had turned their entire society into a weapon that couldn't be defeated because it couldn't be engaged directly. "We understand something that most species learned too late," Admiral Santos said as we concluded our tour. "The most powerful military is one that never needs to fight. Our reluctance isn't our weakness, it's the source of our strength." The Confederation Council received my updated analysis with stunned silence. Humanity hadn't just developed a new form of warfare, they had fundamentally changed what warfare meant. Their apparent technological inferiority had masked an approach to conflict so advanced that most species couldn't even recognize it as military capability. The Varaxian Empire's humiliation proved to be just the beginning. Other aggressive species, watching the humans' revelation of power, began reassessing their positions. The humans had demonstrated that they could defeat any conventional military force without firing a shot, and they had done it while maintaining their commitment to preserving life. Trade routes shifted, diplomatic alliances reformed. Species that had dismissed humans as weak now sought their protection. The galaxy's balance of power transformed not through conquest or intimidation, but through the quiet demonstration of an irresistible truth. True power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the capability to prevent destruction. As I prepare to submit my final report on human military capabilities, I find myself wrestling with a profound realization. We had always assumed that a species' military power could be measured by its weapons, its ships, its willingness to engage in combat. The humans proved that real military superiority comes from making combat unnecessary. Their reluctance to wage war wasn't a sign of weakness. It was evidence of a strength so fundamental that we had failed to recognize it. They had mastered warfare by transcending it, creating a form of military power that didn't require violence to be effective. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps that was their greatest victory of all. Defenders of peace. 3 cycles after the Varaxian incident, I found myself documenting a profound transformation in galactic society. The humans had unleashed something more potent than any weapon, an idea that changed how species viewed power itself. The first major test of this new paradigm came from an unexpected quarter. The Cathari Collective, notorious raiders from the Galactic core, launched a series of attacks against smaller Confederation worlds. Their tactics had always been simple: strike hard, take what they wanted, and vanish before any response could be mounted. But this time, something was different. At each attack site, human diplomatic vessels arrived within hours. These ships, now recognized as part of their sophisticated defense network, didn't pursue the raiders. Instead, they began helping the affected worlds implement what humans called adaptive resilience protocols. I observed as human advisors taught these worlds to modify their infrastructure, making it simultaneously more robust and less attractive to raiders. They introduced self-repairing technologies, decentralized resource storage, and automated defense systems that focused on protection rather than retaliation. The Cathari soon discovered that their targets had become functionally unraidable. Their victims could now absorb and recover from attacks faster than the raiders could mount them. More importantly, the spoils of their raids had become worthless. Resources were now stored in forms that only the rightful owners could effectively use. "You've taught them to become like you," I remarked to Ambassador Chen during a council session. "No," she corrected me. "We've helped them discover their own strength. Every species has the capacity to defend without destroying. We just show them how to find it." The human approach spread like a virus of peace. Worlds that had lived in fear of stronger neighbors began implementing their own versions of systemic defense. Trade routes once guarded by heavily armed warships now flowed freely, protected by interlocking networks of passive security measures. But perhaps the most remarkable change came in how conflicts themselves evolved. When disputes arose between species, they increasingly sought human mediation, not because humans were neutral, but because they had proven that the most powerful party in any conflict could afford to be the most reasonable. I witnessed this firsthand during the Centauri Ring crisis. 2 species claimed the same resource-rich asteroid belt, and traditional diplomacy had failed to prevent mounting military tensions. The humans proposed what they called a mutual elevation solution. Instead of arbitrating who owned the territory, they helped both species develop technologies to access resources that had previously been unreachable. The contested asteroid belt became unnecessary, as both civilizations expanded into new resource frontiers. The potential war transformed into a cooperative technological revolution. Conflict, a human diplomatic AI explained to me, is often just a failure to recognize abundant alternatives. The Confederation's military doctrine underwent radical revision. Species that had prided themselves on their martial might began investing in what humans called peace-positive technologies, innovations that increased their security by raising the prosperity and stability of their neighbors. Even the Voraxians, still nursing their wounded pride, started shifting their enormous military infrastructure toward defensive technologies. Their ships, once bristling with weapons, began carrying more diplomatic and humanitarian capabilities. The humans didn't defeat us, a Voraxian admiral admitted to me during a security conference. They showed us a better way to be strong. But it wasn't all smooth transformation. Some species resisted this new paradigm, claiming it would lead to stagnation or weakness. The humans met these concerns with characteristic patience, never forcing their approach on others, but consistently demonstrating its effectiveness. When the Drachnid hegemony threatened to break away from the Confederation, claiming the new peace protocols made them vulnerable to external threats, humanity responded with an offer of joint defense planning. What they revealed shocked the Drachnid military command. Human defensive capabilities had evolved far beyond what even I had documented. They had developed what they called peace enforcement technologies, systems that could neutralize military aggression without causing harm. More importantly, they had found ways to share these capabilities that didn't require revealing their core technologies. Power used to flow from the barrel of a gun, Admiral Santos told the Drachnid delegation, quoting an ancient human saying. Now it flows from the ability to make guns unnecessary. The hegemony not only remained in the Confederation, but became one of the strongest advocates for human defensive doctrine. Their warriors, once celebrated for their combat prowess, became renowned for their skill in preventing conflicts before they began. Perhaps the most profound change I observed was in how younger species viewed conflict. Civilizations just achieving interstellar travel no longer rushed to build weapons or establish military dominance. Instead, they sought to develop resilient societies and cooperative defense networks. Human diplomatic corps traveled extensively, teaching what they called the mathematics of peace, complex systems of interaction that made warfare progressively less advantageous and eventually impossible between participating species. We're not trying to change the galaxy through force, Ambassador Chen explained during one such mission. We're showing that force itself is outdated. True power lies in making conflict obsolete. As I compile this section of my report, I find myself reflecting on the elegance of the human approach. They had taken the most basic drive of all species, the desire for security, and transformed it from a source of conflict into a force for cooperation. Their reluctance to wage war had never been about fear or weakness. It was born from the profound understanding that the strongest warriors are those who make fighting unnecessary. In teaching this lesson to the galaxy, they had become not just powerful, but truly indispensable. The price of victory. A decade has passed since humanity revealed their true nature to the galaxy. As I prepare to retire from my position as Chief Military Analyst, I find myself compiling what may be my most important report yet, an analysis of how a species that refused to wage war reshaped our understanding of power itself. The humans had a saying, "The war you prevent is the greatest victory you can achieve." Initially, we dismissed this as naive idealism. Now we understand it as the foundation of the most effective military doctrine the galaxy has ever seen. Today, I witnessed something that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. The Voraxian Empire and the Cathari Collective, once bitter enemies, jointly inaugurated a strategic defense initiative based on human principles. Their representatives stood together in the Confederation Council, describing how their shared defensive network had made traditional military confrontation obsolete. We once measured strength by our ability to destroy. The Voraxian Supreme Commander declared, "The humans showed us that true power lies in making destruction unnecessary." But this transformation came with its own challenges. As more species adopted human defensive protocols, new questions arose. Some feared that humanity's approach would lead to cultural homogenization or technological dependence. The humans, characteristically, had anticipated these concerns. Each species must find its own path to peace. Ambassador Chen explained during a crucial council session. We don't offer solutions, we offer possibilities. The strength of our approach lies in its ability to adapt to different cultures and values. This flexibility proved crucial during the recent Arcadian crisis. The Arcadians, an ancient species known for their rigid adherence to traditional combat doctrines, initially rejected all human influence. When their territory faced a devastating natural disaster, they reluctantly accepted human aid. What they discovered surprised everyone. The human response teams didn't try to change Arcadian military structure. Instead, they showed how traditional Arcadian warrior principles could be applied to disaster prevention and recovery. The same precision and discipline that made them fearsome warriors made them exceptional at preserving peace. The humans didn't ask us to abandon our ways, the Arcadian war chief told me. They showed us how to fulfill our highest ideals without requiring an enemy to fight. Perhaps the most profound change I've observed is in how we understand conflict itself. Humanity's approach revealed that most wars arise not from genuine disagreement, but from an inability to imagine alternatives. Their defensive networks don't just protect against attacks, they actively generate new possibilities for cooperation. The statistics tell a compelling story. In the decades before humanity's influence, the Confederation averaged 37 major military conflicts per cycle. Last cycle, we recorded only 2, both quickly resolved through automated defensive protocols before any casualties occurred. But the humans aren't satisfied. They continue to innovate, not in weapons technology, but in what they call peace architecture, systems that make conflict progressively less likely and less rewarding. Their latest project, the Galactic Resilience Network, aims to create a self-sustaining peace that doesn't require active maintenance. The ultimate defense, Admiral Santos explained to me, is a galaxy where war isn't just unlikely, it's irrelevant. Some critics argue that humanity's approach has made them the de facto rulers of the Confederation. The humans respond to this criticism in characteristic fashion, by deliberately limiting their own influence and encouraging other species to develop independent defensive capabilities. We don't want to be the galaxy's peacekeepers, Ambassador Chen told the Council recently. We want peace to keep itself. This philosophy was tested during the Exodus event, when a previously unknown species arrived at the galaxy's edge, fleeing from some distant catastrophe. Traditional doctrine would have seen them as a potential threat. Instead, the human-influenced Confederation immediately began helping them establish their own defensive infrastructure. The strongest shield, humans like to say, is a neighbor who has no reason to attack you. As I conclude my final report, I find myself reflecting on the true nature of humanity's victory. They didn't just win a war or establish dominance. They fundamentally changed how the galaxy understands power, strength, and security. Their reluctance to wage war wasn't a sign of weakness. It was evidence of a wisdom that took the rest of us too long to comprehend. In showing us that true strength lies not in the ability to win conflicts, but in the capacity to make them unnecessary, they achieved something far greater than military victory. They created a peace that perpetuates itself. Looking back on my initial assessment of human military capability, I'm struck by how thoroughly I misunderstood what I was seeing. We all did. We thought their reluctance to fight meant they couldn't. In reality, they had simply progressed beyond the need for traditional warfare. The humans remain enigmatic in many ways. They continue to maintain their defensive capabilities while working tirelessly to make them unnecessary. They celebrate peace while preparing for war, always hoping their preparations will prevent conflict rather than win it. Perhaps that is their greatest lesson to the galaxy. True power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to make destruction obsolete. They became the masters of warfare by mastering the art of peace. As I submit this final report, I can't help but wonder what the humans will teach us next. After all, they've shown us that the impossible is often just a failure of imagination. In their reluctance to wage war, they have given us something far more valuable than victory. They have given us a future where victory itself means something entirely new.